So Yan-Jung ships are primarily shield tanks. In some cases you could technically make them a hull tank if you like, but primarily they use shields. Now this ship, the Lucent-Moon, does have one special rig slot where you can enhance the shield or armor. Now last time I was using this thing exclusively as a shield tank ship. Today I'll be doing the armor tank for this thing. Now the difference between shield and armor on Yan-Jung ships is quite significant, and the rig does kind of help with that since it adds like 150% extra armor hit points, which is definitely a lot more than what the shield does give you, but it kind of needs it since it has only 150,000 armor compared to 300,000 shield. So basically we're looking at a doubling in the shield volume here. Now let me quickly go and use the rig. This is the, you can actually safely remove them, which is a very nice thing. You don't have to destroy them, so you can change them if you like. So there's honestly big difference between the stats there, but the bigger difference is the armor volume here. Plus 150% extra armor. Now this is required because it has to give so much since this ship doesn't have a lot of armor by default. But let me, before I mess something up, let me quickly remove the rigs here since it has to be armor rigs. Okay, now everything is removed. And here you can take a look at the base stats. 805,000 in shield, 466,000 in armor. Now let's see how much the rig will change when I equip it. Well, now the 1.1 million in armor now, and a halving in shield. That's actually a significant amount of armor, and I would say roughly the same amount of armor as the amount of shield that you get with the special shield rig. So I guess it is definitely balanced when it comes to how much hit points you get, whether it's shield or armor, and it's a very nice thing. So that means it's going to perform equally as well on shield and armor hit point wise. Now for the rigs, I'll be doing the same thing I've done on the shield build, but the only difference is it's going to be a armor build. Now with armor you do get some advantages, specifically the capacitor usage is vastly better on armor. You can maintain a very stable armor tank without much of a problem, while the shield tank usually is more capacitor heavy. And the resistance on armor can be much better, especially if you include those armor fleets with armor guardians, logistics, and if you include the new implant, which does increase the resistance a lot. You can get 99% armor resistance on this thing in a armor tank fleet without much of a problem. And armor tank fleets are currently a valuable asset when it comes to super capital ship hunting, and in general they're very good against carriers, super carriers. Very hard to break a armor tank fleet. The drawback is that the armor tank fleet doesn't work with a lot of ships. I think like 50 is the limit. 50 is about the limit. Mostly because of the way armor works. Now, speaking of armor, I will be pulling off a LOGI build first, just to see how it would work and how it would look. And this is basically how it can work as a LOGI. The difference between shield and armor here in this case is I have less batteries here because armor repairs and remote armor repairs use less capacitor, and I can focus a little bit more on tank. It has like 3 plates. You do get a bonus on plates, so it's nice to take advantage of that bonus. 6.5 million hit points docked. Now with the armor repair implants, the remote armor implant. This implant is very good, and I think it's kind of underrated. Maybe not. I'm not really familiar with what's going on the fleet scene or big Rome or small fleet scene, but from what my friends told me, this implant is very good, and it is one of the more important assets for a armor fleet. We can take a look at the attributes here and at the stats of the implant. Overall, this seems to be interesting because you can actually enhance your own resistance with this. Overall, the thermocirculation implant is also good. We'll be showing you the stats of that in this video as well, since I believe the thermocirculation is also one of the more interesting and cost-effective implants that you can use. Now for this ship, of course, in most cases you are probably not going to be using the thermocirculation implant, since this is a carrier, and on this ship you would probably be using bombs, aerospace, or the remote armor implant. But technically you can do a bait Lucent-Moon build with the thermocirculation implant, where you can bait a hot drop or a super capital, since this thing can surprisingly be very tanky. Now, let me quickly adjust all the modules and we can check out the stats. Good thing is you can group all the modules now, including the remote repairs. There was a time where you will not be able to group them, haven't been able to group them, but that's been changed. I don't know when, but it was changed. 13 million hit points, 79, 88, 86 and 83, not bad. Definitely not bad. Has a lot of armor hit points though, so that kind of helps. And let's see how that extra armor resistance will work when the implant is active. 0 DPS as expected, since this is a LOGI. 17,000 hit points now. Okay. Now I believe that my stats here on the armor repairs are a little bit bugged, and I think that it doesn't really show the exact numbers. Should be a significant boost, and there should be a significant increase in capacitor usage when the implant is active. Basically the same way. It works about in about the same way the shield repair, the remote shield repair implant works. It vastly increases the capacitor usage, but at the same time it also enhances the repair quite a bit. But yeah, that's how this thing looks as a armor tank LOGI. Now for an armor tank, I mean, I personally go with a passive tank. I would go with a passive tank, since you want to have your own capacitor for the remote armor repairs. But you can technically do a active tank as well, or a battery build. I mean, depends what you really want from the ship. And I guess the doctrine can be different, so it's a ship that's suitable for every single possible scenario. Now this would be a combat build, a full-on brick tank. I call this the Revelation build, since I have been using a build like this on the Revelation for the very first time, and that build proved itself to be very good when it comes to absorbing a lot of damage. And speaking of absorbing damage, this is the thermocirculation implant. Now I will be showing you the implant performance with railguns and without railguns. Now we might wonder, why railguns? This is a carrier. Well, you can actually get another extra 30% resistance on the armor when you overheat the implant, and that basically works on all armor tanks. You can always use one high slot for a railgun to overheat the implant, which is very nice, and you do have certain bait builds that take advantage of something like this. I have the implant on level 30, I believe, but I never really used the level 30 attribute because most of my ships don't really need that. But today I will show you how that will look on this carrier. 11.9 million hit points, 88, 92, 91 and 89% resistance. And okay, I didn't mess anything up, just making sure. I actually expected a lot more. I actually expected more. I expected about 92, 91% average, but you know, I guess this is going to be fine as well, I guess. But I definitely did expect a lot more resistance. Maybe, I mean, I can definitely change the rigs, and that's going to do it. But nonetheless, let me show you the troll build. Well, technically a troll build with one railgun. Actually, just to make things faster, I don't want to spend like 70 minutes just to charge an implant. Let me just add all railguns. But yeah, this trick will work with literally any railgun in the high slot. It can be small, medium, large, extra large, capital, subcapital. It will work the same way. The trick is to overheat implant and to get the extra 30% from the secondary level 30 attribute of the implant. So let me show you how the tank on this will look with the secondary attribute of the level 30 thermocirculation implants. Now again, I personally never really used the level 30 secondary attribute on most of my ships. I mean, I used the thermocirculation for a very long time. I primarily use the primary attribute since it's honestly the best. One of the best cost-effective implants in the game at the moment, because all you need is level 15 and you can already build some very tanky armor tank ships. Now let's let the implant charge. You can also combine that with a damage control. So that's tank on top of tank, and I kind of used I thought to use the idea on the revelation. It would work really well, to be honest, since you can always shoot the gate with the small railgun to keep the implant charged. Actually, I don't think you can fit a small railgun. I would have to fit a capital railgun on the revelation in order to make this work, but yeah, it should work the same way regardless of what weapon you're using. Now of course the DPS increase is not going to be much, since this is not a turret ship, this is a capital. And someone mentioned capital decomposers. They will probably be added at one point, but there's a good chance that the normal capital weapons, the normal decomposer weapons will be added before that with the normal Yan-Jung ships. So let's keep a close eye on the resistances now. Funny enough, there is a moment where for some reason the stats do bug out and they show an inaccurately small number, like now 6.4 million hit points. Yeah, that's definitely not correct. Kind of funny though, but it will kick in. There we go, 16.7 million hit points, 92, 95, 94, 92%. Yeah, this is relatively tanky, and when the effect goes away, the damage 58 million hit points, 98% on all damage types. Not bad.
Docking request
Not
accepted.
bad at all. I actually expected a bit more though. I definitely expected a bit more resistance, but nonetheless, I would say it's still pretty good, still decent. So cannot really complain about that. Now, you can do a passive armor tank if you like, a full-on Chonk build if you like, with plates. A build like that is more for a fleet and less for solo, but you know, you can do that since you do have a bonus on plates. You do have a very nice resistance profile as well, so it is going to be fairly tanky, and in a fleet definitely a hard ship to crack. Of course, I'm very sure in a fleet, if this ship ever sees a fleet battle, that is, it will be a logistic, so it will most likely be used as a passive tank, regardless of what it's built for. But I would say LOGI purpose is definitely the primary build for this ship. At least from what I have seen, most of these ships are used for are used as LOGIs. It's very rare to see one of these built for combat, but nonetheless, they are still funny to use for combat since they can get some good DPS. Now today, when I do the combat part, it will be used with the lightweight ships. Primarily because I just prefer lightweight ships, but the build is the same whether you have like fighters or lightweight ships. The total hit point value of the ship will be the same. The only difference would be the weapons. In this case, the drone ships, the fighters. And now 110 million hit points. That's a very interesting number. Definitely not the highest I've seen for a carrier, but it's pretty decent. It's pretty decent, so I cannot complain about the tank. And this is with plates. Again, this works the same way if you want a active tank. And speaking of different builds for lightweight ships, you can do something like this. Now you have tank and you have a little bit extra DPS as well, which is a very nice little combination. Here you can take a look at the fire system stats. They would definitely enhance the lightweight ship performance. And I'll be equipping the aerospace tactic implant. Now let's undock and let's see how the active stats on this thing look. Definitely a very odd looking ship when you look at the hull of this thing, that's for sure. But I kind of like how it looks. I really do like how this thing looks. Very curious to see how the capital and how the dreadnought and super capital will look. 13,000 DPS and 13 million overall hit points. Well, kind of funny how similar the numbers are. 13 there, 13 there. A little bit different, but you know, I would say that's kind of decently balanced. Still has a good tank, and now it also has some DPS to it, which is nice. So, that was some various builds. Both can be used for PvE and PvP, but how would a glass PvP build look? Well, honestly, it would look the same as the previous build I've done a couple days ago with shield. The only difference is in the low slots. I will put armor plates and adaptive armor harness. Although you can fit more adaptive harness instead of armor plates, you can put 2 adaptive harness and a damage control, or even 3 adaptive harness and a damage control without any plates. Depends what you prefer, really. And as for the rigs, you can keep 1 armor integration rig for resistance and 2 other lightweight ship or fighter rigs for DPS. In this case, burst, since burst rigs do work really well with the damage mods when it comes to the damage calculation and multiplying. So that would be one way to do it. Actually, you can technically have over 88% resistance on this ship with only one integration, uh, and you can still have fantastic DPS. The only difference is the overall armor volume will be reduced since you don't have any armor plates with that build, but one integration for all 4 damage types for resistance and 3 adaptives and a damage control will definitely give you some interesting stats, and a build like that is more for a fleet. Most of the glass builds are definitely for a fleet, since you are absolutely not going to be running around with this thing solo. And I will explain why in a moment. The overall ship is nice, the hit points are nice, but as we all have seen by now, the ship doesn't have any special module. It doesn't have any sensor mode, it doesn't have any LOGI mode, it doesn't have anything like that. It is basically a classic ship, classic capital ship. No special modes or anything similar. And that means the lock-on time will be quite long. And you will see that later on in action. Now, I'll equip 5 damage mods just to show you that there is literally no big difference in the DPS if you add a 5th damage mod. 4 damage mods are, I would say, maximum. 5 maybe in some cases, but 4 damage mods are like ideal, and that's the highest number that I would prefer and that I would use. So let's take this thing out for a little ride and let's see how it works. Now, as I mentioned before, the largest drawback of this ship at the moment, and I would say the largest bottleneck on this ship, is definitely the lack of any special mode. Lack of the sensor mode means that you'll be stuck with the default scan resolution, sensor resolution. That means you will spend quite a lot of time to lock on stuff. Now, that might be changed down the road. They might give the ship a sensor mode. I mean, they have changed carriers in the past. They might change this carrier as well at one point. We never know what can happen, right? Anything is possible. So maybe it will get a sensor mode, maybe it will get a special mode that we haven't seen so far. But at the moment, the largest drawback for the ship, the bottleneck if you want to call it, is the slow lock on time. In some cases that's actually not a bad thing, since you don't have any 2-minute cooldown. As we all know, classic carriers and do have a longer cooldown where you cannot warp away from the grid if you turn on the module, which did lead to the demise of a lot of carriers in the past, and it will be probably the reason why a lot of other carriers will be destroyed in the future. But once you do lock on and once the light fishes or fighters start to roll out, this thing does clear very quickly, and yeah, I gain only 800 extra DPS with that 1 extra damage mod, which is honestly nothing. So yeah, that 5th damage mod is definitely kinda useless, but you know, just for a test. Just for a test, it should be fine. But as you can see, it does delete ships very quickly. And I have absolutely no complaints about this ship's DPS performance. It's very close to the CNC carrier. The advantage that you do get with the CNC carrier is it has a special mid-slot module and it has nanocores, which means that you can get more DPS out of the CNC carrier at the moment. But down the road in the future, there is a good chance that this thing will also get a nanocore. The question is, what will the nanocore be like? Is it going to be a nanocore focused on LOGI, or is it going to be a damage focused nanocore? Will it be both? My bet is that you would have primary attributes for both, as we have seen on some of the previous ships, where you do get different roles. You can choose if you want tank, repair, or DPS. And I think that's going to be the case with this ship as well. We will see how it will be rolled out. But yeah, nanocore is definitely going to be made for this thing, that's for sure. This ship kind of reminds me a lot on the Canyon Logistic Assault, which is very similar. I think Yan-Jung ships will follow the same role as this ship follows. I am fairly sure we will see Yan-Jung ships with both turret and the drone performance, as well as some form of LOGI purpose. So I guess that's going to be the unique part about them. Some of them will probably have special modes. I know the Canyon Logistic Assault does have a LOGI mode. I'm very sure the other ships will have the same, and I'm also fairly sure there will be normal faction Yan-Jung ships. I mean, I just cannot wait to start to fly that space banana. That little boat is fun. I actually use it for PvP at the moment. I like to drop that thing on various different targets. Well, usually targets that aren't as serious as some of the other targets, but it is indeed a very fun little boat to drive around. Its shape does look like a banana, so yeah, that's why it's called the space banana. In any case, this thing does work really well so far. DPS wise, and if you are wondering what weapon would I prefer, I would prefer lightweight ships, and this is I guess my personal opinion, and yeah, this will be my personal opinion. But if you are trying to figure out what weapon system you want to skill into for this ship, from my experience, I would say lightweight ships, based on how they work, based on their performance, DPS, clear speed. I would prefer lightweight ships, and my recommendation is to go with lightweight ships. Now that's a personal thing here. I'm not saying lightweight ships are the only thing going on for this thing, right? But from my experience, I prefer lightweight ships. You can use fighters though. If you have skills for fighters, you can use fighters, and you don't have to necessarily skill out of fighters and skill into lightweight ships for this ship. You can use fighters. It's just from my personal experience, I find that the lightweight ships seem to be doing maybe a little bit better. But again, that's just personal preference at this moment. So let's see. I mean, I am clearing this definitely faster than usual. And that does kind of open the question, well, how does this compare to versatile assault carriers? Well, yeah, I definitely have a lot of testing ahead. So it will be done though. At this rate, I'm looking at 8 different videos perhaps, specifically testing out this thing. It will be fun. But yeah, I'll find that out. Oh my god, 8 videos with this thing, and then I also have to do the super capital stuff. We're looking at 12. Yeah, I have a lot of work to do. In any case, Do I see fighters there? Oh, I think I got a CNC carrier spawn. Oh, finally a worthy opponent. That's going to be fun. Well, I guess can be an example of what happens when a CNC carrier does spawn. Will be fun to. I think this is like my first. This is the first time I got a CNC carrier spawn while testing out ships. Okay, now we're talking. Now we are talking about something.
We're under
Well, that
attack.
definitely is stripping my shield down very quickly. I have to say that thing has DPS.
Shield
Now let me
damage.
quickly remove all the smaller ships, since I'm fairly sure that CNC carrier will have some nasty tank. I've been told that they can be very tanky, so that's going to be fun to see how it will work. Yeah, my shield is getting removed.
We're
That's
under attack.
expected. Kind of not exactly worried, but kind of wish I had one more adaptive instead of that one damage mod. This is why I'm saying the 50 damage mod is kind of
We're under attack.
not really useful. Much better to go off with a resistance module, but I guess for the sake of testing, we will see what will happen here. Now I turned on my armor repairer, which is probably not going to repair much, but better than nothing.
We're under attack.
Still, you can see that this thing still has a lot of armor, and I feel like I'm about to go into 50% armor throughout the battle with the CNC carrier here.
We're under attack.
But yeah, definitely a
We're under
a moment
attack.
where an extra adaptive hardener would be much better than to have one extra damage mod. Seven ships left, including the fighters, and we can soon focus on the CNC carrier. The dead carrier is using a capital neutralizer. That explains why my capacitor is taking hits there. Definitely a nasty ship to fight, that's for sure. And now let's focus on the main boss. Well, main boss. Not exactly main boss, but you know what I'm talking about. No, it's actually quite funny to compare the size of the CNC to the size of the Lucent-Moon. The Lucent-Moon is huge. And this is actually a fairly small carrier compared to this thing. I think like the Concorde carrier is like, I think 2.5 kilometer in length, or maybe 3.5 kilometer in length. This thing is 4.4 kilometers from top to bottom, I guess. It's not long, it's tall, yeah, I mean it's kind of the same thing, but yeah, it's a fairly big boat. And that carrier is fairly tanky. I am in 79% armor, the CNC is about 50% shield. The shield repair on that thing is nice.
Low.
After all, the CNC carrier does get a bonus on shield boosters, on capital shield boosters. And that thing can be fairly tanky actually. If you build the CNC carrier in the right way, it can be very tanky. it can definitely be very tanky.
Warning, capacitor running low.
Well, my capacitor is not in a good shape. That capital neutralizer is definitely doing a impact on my ship here. But the shield on the CNC carrier is getting depleted. And I think the armor on that thing will be removed much faster than the shield. But again, we will find that out very soon. Yeah, that's definitely much more damage on the armor than on the shield. Okay. I think the ship will hold out. That capital neutralizer, I'm telling you, that capital neutralizer is scary for sure. And this is why I don't like glass builds, because when something like this happens, well, it can happen. It's still nothing critical, you can still kill it just fine. And you can still warp off just fine. It's just a little bit more riskier to fly the ship with this build than with the previous. Only one adaptive would make a huge difference in the total damage that I would take. Would really be a big difference. Just a little bit hull left on the CN carrier. And there we go. The boss has been defeated. So that would be it for today with the Lucent-Moon. And this would be the armor tank build. No, I would still prefer shield or armor on Yan-Jung ships. I still think shield is definitely the way to go, but if you have good armor skills, if you're part of a armor fleet, then it works. It's pretty solid and it works. So glad that these ships are so, I guess, unique, and we will see what other Yan-Jung ships will bring to the table. But with that being said, hope you guys enjoyed. If you would like to support me, feel free to like and subscribe. And with that being said, stay safe, fly safe, and as always, I'll see you next time.